Good morning. Thank you for joining us today for the 33rd meeting of the Board of Lake County Commissioners. Would all those who are willing and able please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Grant us, O Lord, light to our understanding, prudence in our investigating, foresight in our planning, sincerity in our deliberating, the grace to follow truth in our judgment. Help us to be moved in our decision, neither by fear nor by self-interest, and to do our work faithfully. May we respect the authority vested in us, for thou art the source of all authority, and may we use it in our directives for the common good and for thy honor and glory. Amen. Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Serino.
Here.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Very good. This brings us to our first public comment portion of our meeting. Administrator Boyd, do we have any email correspondence? Indicating none. And we have no one in the audience requesting to speak. So, Madam Clerk, resolutions?
In the Engineer's Office, resolution authorizing the Lake County Administrator to enter into a release between the Lake County Board of Commissioners on behalf of the Engineer's Office and Progressive Insurance in exchange for the noise barrier wall repair on State Route 2.
Second.
And discussion. Jim?
I'm going to defer to Mike.
Okay.
Yes, there was an automobile accident with a semi-truck. The semi-truck was carrying thousands of pipes, and when the accident happened, the pipes let loose and went through the noise barrier wall, about a half-mile stretch on State Route 2 westbound. And then this is the quote and the cost. If this is passed, then next week you will see a resolution for the best quote for the same amount of the $298,800.
Very good. Further discussion?
Nope.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Serino.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Utilities Department, resolution transferring appropriations within Lake County Department of Utilities Solid Waste Operating Fund.
Move to adopt.
Discussion. None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Serino.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving plan specifications and estimates of cost in the amount of $1,333,000 for Som Center Road under I-90 Waterline Replacement Project number 424W and advertising for bids for the same, bid opening September 30th, 2020.
Second.
And discussion. Randy, did you want to give us some background?
Sure. This is, again, part of our capital improvement plan for 2020. This pipe, it goes underneath the freeway at Som Center. It's one of the few pipes that provides water to the south of I-90. So it's critical for us to make sure that this is operating well into the future. So that's why it's on our list for this year.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Further discussion?
None.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Serino.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving plan specifications and estimates of cost in the amount of $632,300 for gas collection control system improvements for the Lake County Solid Waste Facility Project number 429L and advertising for bids for the same, bid opening September 30th, 2020.
Move to adopt.
And discussion. Randy, did you want to?
Yeah, this is just more improvements at the landfill. This is for the gas collection system, and it'll be extended into the expansion of the landfill also.
Mr. President,
Sir.
if I may add to that, Randy, this is, again, for note to be taken, excuse me, by our residents in Paynesville Township. This is yet another step and another investment in order to reduce and or eliminate certainly the noxious odors that residents were complaining about for quite a long time. So thanks for continuing this work, and I know the residents appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Promises made, promises kept. Further discussion? Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Serino.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving plan specifications and estimates of cost in the amount of $137,448.74 for sanitary sewers for Cardinal Metal subdivision in the city of Mentor, job number 20-26.
Move to adopt. Second?
And discussion. Randy, do you want to talk about this and possibly the next one as well? Or?
Yeah, both of these next two projects are subdivisions. They're going to be public sewers in subdivisions, but they're privately funded by the developer. And once the project is installed and approved, then we'll take over operation and maintenance of that sewer.
Very good. Further discussion?
No.
Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving plans, specifications, and estimates of cost in the amount of $67,710.50 for sanitary sewers for Mentor Innovation and Technology Park in the city of Mentor, job number 19-43.
Move to adopt.
And discussion. Randy, the same thing. So these prices, does the county get reimbursed on that? I'm sure that's going to be one of the questions then, if it's installed by the developer.
No, the costs are developed just so we have a value to the project. The entire improvement is for any subdivision that's developed in this manner is paid for by the developer.
So these numbers are just a reference, a bookmark as to, again, as you indicated, value.
Right. We need to have that number in our financial report at the end of the year on the value of our system.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure public likes to hear that, so, okay. Further discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
And Job and Family Services Department, resolution approving the County Department of Job and Family Services vouchers, date of warrant September 11, 2020, in the amount of $131,849.82.
Second?
Discussion. None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Commissioner's Office, resolution to reject the petition and to rename said portion of Rumen Road located in Leroy Township to Old Rumen Road.
Move to adopt.
Discussion. Jim.
Well, as we know from the last week, we had a public hearing on this particular thing. That's the older section of Vernon Road that goes down the hill now to the park. The residents were complaining that we had named it Sealy Road, which was part of the original public hearings and the original planning, but they wished it to be changed. We recommended it be changed to Old Rumen Road instead of Rumen Road Extension, primarily because extension means going on. And we appreciate the Commissioner's consideration in this matter.
And based on the discussion, this is going to cause the least confusion. Rumen Road's not going to dead end at the bottom of the hill. It just keeps things clean, simple. And the residents, although they seem to want to keep, I think they indicated an understanding of going this direction. That was my impression. Is that a reasonable statement?
Yes, the one lady stated that she didn't care what the name was as long as it had Rumen Road in it, or Rumen in it, and Old Rumen Road is really appropriate.
Very good. Further discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Finance Department, resolution approving payment of bills as listed on the Commissioner's Approval Journal in the amount of $502,802.56.
Second?
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving purchase orders as listed on the Commissioner's Purchase Order Approval Journal in the amount of $755,024.94.
Move to adopt.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution increasing appropriations of various non-general fund accounts.
Move to adopt.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution transferring appropriations within various general and non-general fund accounts.
Move to adopt.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Young. Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes. This brings us to our departmental reports portion of our meeting. Utilities. Randy.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm very happy to report that we continue to get very good prices on our projects that we're bidding out. Yesterday, we opened bids for Green Road waterline improvement in East Lake, and the low bid came in about 20% less than the engineer's estimate. We had several bidders, which is encouraging also. So it looks like a good time to put out some projects and continue to make improvements to our systems.
Excellent. Jim.
Don't you hurt my new pavement.
I think, Mr. President, I believe it's our new pavement,
Well,
correct?
Correct. Excuse me, Commissioners.
I don't know. That's skin in the game, though. I kind of like people who have that kind of enthusiasm. So there you
I
go.
keep saying JG carpet, the concrete though, so. It's really all right.
Nice. Randy, thank you. All right, moving on to our county administrator, Jason Boyd.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. Just a brief update. As you know, House Bill 481 was passed some time ago with CARES Act funding dedicated to the entire county, of which about $1.4 million is coming to Lake County. Just wanted to let the board know that Director Matus and I continue to work with all of our department heads and elected officials to distinguish and prioritize eligible costs that we'll use these funds for, including some appropriate personnel, staff, PPE, and some other improvements that we've made throughout the county during the pandemic. And then, as you may have read yesterday in Columbus, Senate Bill 357 was passed that will direct some additional CARES Act funding to local communities. Unlike 481, this recent bill will be based on population of the communities and not the local government fund. So I'll keep you abreast on that. But Mike and I, Director Matus and I, continue to work with our department heads, and we'll have a list to get us the appropriate expenditures for those dollars. So,
Mr. President, Jason, on that subject, in the course of my work lately, I've talked with people in other counties, our neighboring counties, and I think they're having the same issues that we're having here, is finding enough, not just for the county, but for our political subdivisions. They're having difficulty finding those projects that can be justified under the criteria for the CARES Act.
Correct.
Dollars that we're having come in here. So I think it sounds like to me like it's a universal problem throughout the state.
it is.
So tell us a little bit about the conversations you're having with the political subdivisions and our own departments within the county on this issue.
One of the big items is to take a hard look at technology. We know that I think Lake County was prepared to have individuals work remotely. That we were a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to virtual connectivity, laptops, our telecom department. A lot of the municipalities and townships didn't have that wherewithal, so we're encouraging them to take a look at your IT side in the event this were to ever happen again. We just found out on a guidance call 2 weeks ago that there is an eligible cost for COVID cruisers for the local police departments. So we're working with Sheriff Leon Bruno and Chief Deputy Sherwood on those sorts of things. And then improvements to the facility, as odd as this may sound, but touchless devices, be it faucets, toilets, door openers to minimize contact throughout the facilities. Our jail, we're looking at those sorts of things. From a manpower perspective, staying on the disinfectant side, we're investing in, you may have seen them at businesses, restaurants, I've seen them at golf courses. It's almost a backpack device where there's a mist that can be sprayed on, from technology to paper, anything in an office environment, and they can do a room in about a minute, as opposed to having a staff person in here probably 20 to 30 minutes to do a thorough clean to create that safety component.
So the requirements, as they've been at least either initially laid out or subsequently in clarifications, we can include projects that would be to preempt or be in anticipation of another event such as this?
If it's a result of COVID,
if it's the threat of another type of COVID thing,
Yes.
that's my question, really.
Yeah, and so with the current dollars, the cost could not be paid for prior to March 17th. So anything before that does not apply, and it has to be paid for or encumbered by the end of the year, or those dollars have to be returned. but we are encouraging folks to look for the next what if and being prepared to continue the workflow in the event. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
So county infrastructure, for example, or it would apply to the cities as well, I would assume, would be covered under the criteria that if we put an infrastructure modification or enhancement together, that would allow us to better react to something like this if and when it happens again, would be covered and would survive an audit.
We would yes, we would just want to make sure that we check every box in the criteria. So what we're doing is working with Auditor Galloway, Prosecutor's Office, and Finance Director, and looking at all these expenses, and there's hundreds of them, from a legal perspective, an audit perspective, and Mike's finance perspective.
I know you can't predict the results of an audit, but
Yes.
at least we want to have all the boxes checked so that we're
Absolutely. So we're looking, this particular facility has all the touchless devices. But when you think about all the county buildings and doors that manually have to open, not that that's a priority, but it's an eligible expense that we feel confident, and then it'll reduce the impact to the general fund if we can make those improvements now. And Lord knows, in the jail, we've got a number of improvements that need to happen, and if we could make those comply with the CARES Act funding, then that's something that we're going to consider. And we also have personnel costs that are eligible. For example, corrections officers in the jail who are dealing daily with COVID. Key management personnel from March 17th till whenever, who, myself included, who spent a considerable amount of time figuring out where we're going to go, how we're going to get there. That could be an eligible expense. So we've got three buckets of funds that we're going to look at, and we need to have all those funds encumbered or POs open by October the 15th, and so that's what we're working on very diligently.
One other question, if I may, Jason. So changing subjects to our budget for this year, and I don't want precise numbers because I wouldn't expect you to know them all off the top of your head, but generally speaking, we were concerned a little bit about property tax collections, and we had a report a couple weeks ago from our treasurer.
Correct.
That things did not turn out as badly as we had thought they might, which was very good news. Delinquencies are really very low, and those that need payment plans are working them out.
Yes.
And we now have in arrears reports on sales tax, which is the lifeblood of our budget, of our general fund here. What's your sense? What are you seeing, and what do you think we could predict reasonably for the balance of this year?
I think we're in much better shape than we had initially thought in March and April with some of our projections on the sales tax side, with retail being, restaurants and everything being shut down. While we're down slightly a couple of the months, it's not nearly to the levels of our initial forecast. Early on, if you recall, the governor was automatically hitting a 20% reduction. So that was kind of our guidance, knowing that there's still a heavy sales tax base at the state. That we have not realized that level of a decrease yet. Matter of fact, the previous month's report was almost level, which is an enormous win when you run that out to the end of the year. Dave Strichko, our chief building official, has already eclipsed 2019 revenues. As you all know, the real estate market continues to move at a rapid pace. Construction, so there's a lot of good signs out there.
Right. But our guidance to departments and other elected officials was what became effectively, it was a 5%, but it was an effective 10% because
Correct.
It was to be done in 6 months.
Correct.
So I really think that we should maintain that guidance at this point, just to be cautious, because there may be other shoes to drop that we don't know about yet. And
Quarter 4 is going to be very interesting.
yeah, it will be. And hopefully it's very interesting in a positive way.
Correct.
And we can deal with that. But we also have to be concerned about, as we get into setting budgets for next year,
Yes.
what assumptions we're going to make. And I think we should have a separate long discussion about that once we have a number of months in for reporting.
The one thing that makes me stay up at night is the availability of raw materials, and these gentlemen probably know better than I, in the construction industry, and the price escalation from shingles to sheet wood. If you go to a home improvement store or lumber yard, it's not what you're accustomed to seeing. Not only the stock, but the pricing is high. Hopefully the guys behind the scenes who are providing the raw materials are working around the clock, because I think the demand's there. But if that supply chain, if there's a hiccup there, I'm not sure what that's going to do. But I mean, building departments from across the county are just gangbusters right now. So that's a great sign.
And the recorder's offices in several counties that I've talked with are just, they can't do things fast enough.
Yeah,
They're just,
so
there's a lot of activity, which is good.
yeah, I agree. So thank you.
I'd like to bring Randy into this discussion if I could. Randy, you said 20%. The bid was under 20% on your last project there. Is that across the board? I mean, it varies probably from project to project somewhat, but is that sort of a guideline, around 20%?
That's, excuse me, that's what we've seen over the last 5 or 6 bids. I think what's pushing it is also just the amount of bids that we're getting. We had 7 or 8 yesterday. We had 10 or 12 in a bid earlier. The low bid was 20% below, but there was also 3 or 4 bids that were above the engineer's estimate. So the fact that we're able to get that many more contractors interested in the project makes it more competitive for us. So that's a positive. There's been years where we've only had on some of these projects 1 or 2 or 3 bidders on a project, and that, knowing that as a bidder, that the price may go up, and there's could be a sign that there's more work out there, that there's not as much interest. But that's, I think, what's driving ours is just the amount of the bids that come in, but I guess to answer your question, yes, it's been pretty much across the board 20-25% less than what we had anticipated for most of these projects.
And Jim as well? Jim, are you seeing reductions as well in bids?
Yeah, we're not seeing quite that much, but the fact that the price of oil has gone into the ditch has really helped, because asphalt has dropped, and the cost of them running their vehicles has dropped and that kind of thing. So we're seeing that reflected in our bids. We bid a lot of stuff out this year, and we were generally 10-12% below our estimate.
All right, excellent. You rang my bell here.
Yeah, I noticed.
So now might be the time, and maybe we're doing that already, to focus on some of these projects that we might need to get done, if indeed our revenues are holding somewhat steady and the prices are really down. Any thoughts on that, or?
Well, we're still feeling the effect of the governor putting off everybody renewing their license plates for a while.
Yeah.
People are actually, because of the low cost of fuel, people are driving more. People are not flying, they're driving because they don't like to wear the mask and all that stuff they have to go through in an airport. So, that has been surprisingly better. The gas tax has been a little bit better, but it's still not up to where it ought to be, but it's close. So we're expecting, people have to buy license plates, so sooner or later it's going to come back, but we're still looking at that shift, probably maybe not coming all the way back this year, but some into next year. The other problem that we're facing is they just passed a law saying that now you can buy a 5-year license plate. Well, that means that all the tax that we get this year. If he buys a 5 one, we don't get it again for 5 more years. So we're not sure how that's going to affect the flow of cash until we see how it goes for a couple years. We had that same problem when they went from 1 year to 2 years.
Well, wouldn't we accrue that cash someplace in a protected fashion so that it's their advanced sales? And in a business, you would recognize that as a advanced sale, and the cash the revenue would not be recognized, except periodically.
But does the state recognize that, and do they pass that on to you?
Well, the thing is, if they pay it, then we get it.
I know, but it's what you do when you get it, and which would imply not spending it all in the year.
Well, yes. Well, we're already having that discussion internally about how we're going to handle, but we have to see how it's going. Is it going to be a small percentage? Is it going to be a bigger percentage? It took us about 2 years for the 2-year thing to even out and to see how it flowed. So,
right.
We'll be cautious probably for the first year or so.
I think 5 years is a long time. I think people are going to be reluctant. I'd be shocked if a lot of people took that option.
really depends really depends on your philosophy of buying. You know, some people buy cars every 2 years. Some people,
Right.
you know, they buy them every 5 years. You know, in the old days, cars used to rust out in the first year, so you always traded for sure for 3 years because otherwise you didn't have anything around you.
But half the cars are leased, and 70 to 80% of those leases are 3 years.
Well, a lot of them are 2 years.
Some are, I suppose.
Yeah, they're big. They go between 2 and 3 years. So we think it'll probably be okay. You know, a lot of people, I can't see the value in a car or a pickup truck of buying a 5-year license plate when you don't sure what you're going to be doing.
Right.
Yeah, they last, but maybe not. So we'll see. The other problem that we have with that is, you know, until they raised this last time, we did not realize that when you pay a license, when you buy a license for a trailer, you only have to buy. The law says it's only taxed for 5 years. After the trailer's 5 years old, they don't collect the license tax anymore. So, and that's a fairly big impact. As a matter of fact, not for us so much as those southwestern counties that have a lot of truck terminals.
Right, right.
All right, so Jim, you're recommending we hold off for now as far as
Well, we've
shopping
just
for the project.
done a lot of stuff this year. We had a major program in
That's okay.
chip seal. We had a major program thanks to you guys in the resurfacing of many of our roads. So we're in a pretty good shape. We also had a fair amount of federal money in, so we got a couple of those projects going. So we are probably going to look at being very cautious and doing a little bit the next couple of years until we establish how this is going to flow.
Okay, and Randy, what about your situation? Are you recommending we tread very carefully and hold back, or are you recommending more projects at this point that had been scheduled?
Sure. In March and April and May, we were very cautious. That's typically when we're going to be bidding these projects out so we can build them during the summer. We held back quite a few of the projects that we had on our books, keeping a close eye on our revenue and our income and that sort of thing. But as the year went on and our revenue stayed relatively similar to the last couple of years, we started bidding these out. And that's why you're seeing more in August and September, and we bid a few in July also. So we're very cautious, but then as we started getting good prices on these projects, revenue stayed where we expected it to stay or hoped it would stay. We're going to continue to bid these out, and as we get, like yesterday's project that we opened is about $110,000 less than what we expected. Wow. So effectively, we can use that money to bid out possibly the next project. We don't bid these out until we know that we have the funds that we can pay for them, and so every time we bid one out that comes a little bit less, it makes possibly another project feasible. So we're still very cautious, like Mr. Gill said, and advised, but we're also trying to take advantage of and get the work done at
Excellent.
the same time. So
Thank you.
Jason, while we got you up here, some things that the community might be interested in: our Community Development Block Grant CARES Act program. Our small business grants and loans. Very successful.
Yeah, we're probably over 50% of all the funds expended on grants and loans. We did not have a meeting this week. We have a meeting next Tuesday. Memorial Day is Monday. We did, I don't know if it's went out yet, but there will be some radio ads going on to continue to promote the program in the community, continuing to work with the Lake County Development Council and the chambers to continue to spread that word. I did forward on, we've got quite a few emails from some of the small businesses, florists, restaurants, the gratitude toward the program and the commissioners, and you can really read in between the lines on how far on the grant side that $5,000 would go with meeting a couple months rent or some payroll. So I think it's been a great success, and we'll continue to push that. So we have another meeting scheduled for Tuesday, whatever next Tuesday is. So.
And I'm also pleased to say, and I'm going to just read from some notes here, we've got 30 of the 55 projects. They're women business enterprises or minority-owned enterprises.
Yeah, over half of the companies who have come forth are either WBEs or MBEs, women or minority-owned businesses in the county.
So we're hitting our target
From
demographic.
from Wickliffe to Madison to you name it, we're having a broad brush. So yeah, I think it's been successful.
And we still have approximately $300,000.
Yeah. When I looked at the numbers last Thursday, approximately that amount.
So we're trying to push the
Correct.
message out there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. When I see mayors and managers, I like to continue to remind them of what's out there so they can pass that on to their economic development staffs.
Very good, Commissioner.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. President. Jason, on that subject, since it's going more slowly than we had thought would
Yeah.
be required, and we certainly want to move deliberately, and I think we all thank the loan and grant committees for all the work that they're doing, certainly to evaluate these. One of the things maybe you could take a look at with Rhea and Dave is, I know we have a limitation because Mentor has its own district for community development block grants, and that there's some very specific criteria that would allow, as we did in the case of Lamalfa, where something would have an impact on the county. But I've heard from a lot of Mentor businesses, because Mentor did not get that much.
Correct.
And yet they are the the largest commercial enterprise subdivision that we have in the county. I would just ask you guys if you could see about pushing the envelope a little bit and with HUD and seeing if there are some opportunities here, given the fact that we can't expend the monies that we thought we would need. It still would benefit the county and businesses in the county if we were able to open it up a little bit to Mentor businesses. Again, there's such a highly concentrated number of businesses there.
Yeah, absolutely.
We should just take a look at it at least, certainly.
Yep, I'll have Rhea. I know her colleague and mentor that works under the Economic Development Department. Have a really good relationship, so I will make that call today.
Okay.
And Jason, just on that point, Mentor is its own block group. Do you want to expand on that for those who may not know?
Yes, in CDBG world, if you will, municipalities with a population greater than 50,000, and historically Mentor's been greater, is their own entitlement, so they get their own slug of dollars from Washington. So in exceptions, as Commissioner Serino noted, we typically do not, from a sewer line project to a loan, we're not permitted, but there are some provisions that on unique circumstances we can start to look at those things. But yeah, Mentor because of population, and I believe Waite Hill because of income.
And just to be abundantly clear, even to a casual observer, the reason we're not putting traditionally Lake County CDBG money into Mentor is we're expressly prohibited from HUD. One of the exceptions is if there is a countywide impact, which we have worked with.
That is correct. There, if
Clear on that. I just
absolutely.
want to be abundantly clear.
Yeah, so
on
when
that.
you typically do your annual CDBG evaluation exercise and you have 50 applications, you'll note that 0 of them are from Mentor.
Right.
Because of that provision.
Yeah, and that's the setup, and
Sure.
I'm not suggesting that we try to beat that system, but if we're unable to disperse, and if there's some flexibility that we might be able to find, there may be some businesses in Lake County that we could help.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, okay.
And continuing on the opioid litigation, Lake County is one of the bellwether counties chosen by the courts.
Yes.
Can you give us an update on that?
Yeah, there are weekly calls that I sit in with the legal team, and I'm kind of at this point an air traffic controller as they identify key resources in Lake County, and no trial date has been set to date. So.
But the data continues to be collected, the process through the courts continues. Even with all this COVID, there was obviously a little hiccup hither and yon, but we're pretty much still on track.
Correct.
Frank Bellucci is still doing all the things that need to be done.
This is correct.
That's our legal counsel.
That's correct.
Okay, and this one's going to be kind of near and dear to several folks. Our senior levy update. Do you want to just give a...
Yeah, we are nearing the completion at the end of this month of our senior study that we started last fall with collaborative partners led by Ben Fearman and Aaliyah from our staff. Obviously, it took a turn in March, as everything else did. We've learned a lot in in what was going on in the centers and other agencies that receive senior funds. A ton of good data that we never had that's actually mapped so we can see redundancies and market penetrations and so on. It would have been nice to have that data through September, which was the original plan. So we took a shift there in the spring of what's in the senior center world, and the delivery model for Council on Aging is, what does the delivery of services to seniors look like down the road? Nobody really has a good answer for that yet. We've had some really good conversations. I think some of our mayors, as recent as this week, on what's the sustainability, what's the model look like for centers themselves. Obviously, the senior levy is a 5-year levy that produces about $4.5 million on an annual basis, and the demand continues to grow, so we have to make sure we meet that demand. And the model of the past 3 decades probably isn't the model that's going to be sustainable. And I think the path that we've chosen and Leah's been working on with providing a data-based model, it's really hard to argue with what the data is showing. It's the mechanism and the path forward to make it a win-win for, number one, the seniors, and then the levy to support those services. So it's going well.
And that data that we're using to drive the decisions, that's being captured in partnership with the senior centers, leadership in the local communities.
It is their data that we asked of them, that we mapped. And so yeah, and every senior center director, every mayor, every township trustee that has a center, Council on Aging, RSVP, they have all seen the data. We've had independent, collective, so it's been a very inclusive process. I mean, that's the way it should be, as we're looking to model this for the next couple decades. When you look at the senior levy over a 10-year run, it's $45 to $50 million. We need to make sure that that's getting where it needs to go in the most sustainable manner.
Agreed, and that's why we need to get that information out there. That was our goal, and it sounds like it's being achieved.
Yeah, thank you. And one last thing
Yes, sir.
that I forgot, Trustee Clow called this morning, wants to thank the board and County Engineer Gills for the resolution number 8 on the Verman Road. So I want to pass that along on behalf of Leroy.
Very good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my distinguished colleagues have covered the primary issues, I think, very, very well. But there's another issue that you and I have been talking about. I just want to see if you've gotten anything new on it or not. And that, of course, is the wineries. You know, we've had Route 90 out there for a number of years now. We've had boards of commissioners. We've had wineries out there for a number of years. And on Route 90, our major east-west corridor, tens of thousands of cars pass on a regular basis. And yet we have no signage to speak of that advertises the Grand River Valley. You and I have been working with the state and Commissioner Hamercheck especially, Commissioner Serino as well, to try to get some signage out there with state matching monies or state monies that would help fund the project. How is that coming? I mean, we've waited for those signs. The wineries have probably waited for 20 years for such signage. And all it takes, I think, is some sustained action on the part of this board. And I think we're providing that action now. But has there been any movement on that?
You know, the last call we participated in my days are running together, last Tuesday or Thursday with the deputy director from District 12. Thanks to a contact at NOACA, Grace Galucci, to get us right where we needed to go, I think was a great start. I have yet to hear back from Director Pacuri, was his name.
Hasn't contacted me.
I haven't contacted him, but I think we have the appropriate contact to cut to the chase on what we need to do to implement the brand on I-90 as those starting points, and as you talked about, migrating onto 534 and 528.
Yeah, it's a huge revenue driver for the county.
Yes.
Yeah, they say over 60% of the folks that check into those 2 new hotels in Madison there are there for the wineries.
Yeah.
Same percentage for the lodge in Geneva.
There's no doubt.
So this is our central draw for tourism.
And to add on to that point, Commissioner, I've been reaching out, as you would know, to the Department of Commerce to get some real economics on the impact of the wineries, the gallonage they sell. I think that will help our cause when we're soliciting dollars to say, here's the economic impact of this industry. We can do it with bed tax, but I think we need to do it on the consumables. So it's been a tough road for me migrating the Division of Liquor's website. I've called multiple times. They're all working remotely. So I used a contact to get a hold of Governor DeWine's office last week and had a great conversation with a young lady, it's today, Monday, and she's going to start to dig into that economic data, tax implications of the industry, in addition to the lodging.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Young raises a very good point, and again, something of interest as we start diving into this. The umbrella of the Uniform Code of Traffic Control Devices is controlling. We find out that the blue signs are one
one thing.
department.
Brown signs.
Signs are another department.
Yes.
The fencing on the bridges is another department, and the bridge structure itself is another department. So if anybody ever wonders why our engineer gets a little cranky when he's dealing with ODOT, and then to complicate things, we have ODOT District 12, which is us, and then Ashtabula is
Five.
Four.
Yeah.
So I commend you for that, and I commend Commissioner Young using his experience from the state to try to get through the bureaucracy.
And
here.
once we plow through that, we have a brand in place, thanks to the dollars that were directed from the commissioners to the two bureaus to create the brand and the marketing strategy. I think you use this term, the corners are there. We just need to start putting the pieces in. It's just plowing our way through the process.
Mr. President, I would submit that the engineer would be cranky anyway.
Well, perhaps
That comes
Like
with,
that in the record.
that comes with age, Mr.
Yes, it does.
Terry.
it's freshly paved roads in Madison, so you might want to go out and imbibe on your own time, of course, not on the day.
A little bit of wine might relax you.
Yeah,
That concludes my report, and have a great Labor Day.
very good. Thank you, Jason. All right, Madam Clerk.
Yes. I wanted to mention, since we were talking about the senior levy, that there will be 2 open positions on the senior levy advisory panel. They expire September 30th, 2020. If anyone's interested, you can please send me an email. And also, the next commissioners meeting is going to be Thursday, September 10th at 10 a.m. And also, county offices are going to be closed on Monday, September 7th, in observance of Labor Day.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am. And legal, drum roll, please.
No report, commissioners.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to old business. Do we have any old business to come before this board?
I do, Mr. President. I'm going to cover this under old business because the subject is, quite frankly, getting old. But I feel like I'm giving a weekly update on House Bill 6 and the Perry nuclear plant. But so many things are happening that I guess it is important to get updated frequently. And I won't go over what's been in the news. Everybody seems to be paying attention to that. But I did have conversations early this morning and yesterday with people in both the House and the Senate and others regarding what is going on there. It appears that in the Senate, anyway, that there is a much more studied and deliberate approach to deciding what to do with House Bill 6, as opposed to a knee-jerk reaction, which we talked about at our press conference 2 weeks ago. I think the Senate is exercising some more discretion. The chairman of the committee that is evaluating this seems to be going in that direction. That we don't want to do anything quickly that is going to, have some unintended consequences, certainly. And it's also time to, as we asked for 2 weeks ago, the development of some, if it were to be repealed, to have a replacement bill in place to be done simultaneously. But I did want to mention one thing, because I've been getting a lot of questions from a lot of people, as I'm sure my colleagues have, about House Bill 6 and the energy credits that would be paid to what used to be First Energy, which is now Energy Harbor, which operates the 2 plants. And I would just remind everybody who has been very critical of House Bill 6 to go back and look through it, because there are a number of provisions in House Bill 6 that calls for periodic review of the financial condition and situation of Energy Harbor or any entity who would be getting clean energy credits, which is how it's structured. And that it's been assumed that since bankruptcy was cleared by Energy Harbor, that they are in a much better financial condition than they were when House Bill 6 was passed. And it's a fair assumption to say that. And there are provisions in House Bill 6 as it exists today that allows for that scrutiny to be done periodically through regulators to make sure that there is in fact a financial necessity for any energy credits to be granted in the first place, and secondly, to determine what the amount might be. And so people seem to have forgotten that there are safeguards in House Bill 6 that if in fact there is no financial necessity and the plants can operate in the future on their own without any support for clean energy credits, then they will not be granted those. They will be removed. And that remains to be seen. We don't know, the bill hasn't even gone into effect yet, so we don't know what the first periodic review would tell us. But it is a safeguard that was in the bill from the beginning, and I believe it was the Senate that really pushed hard for that. And that is a good safeguard for taxpayers and for ratepayers as we go forward here. So if people are concerned about, there not being a financial necessity for energy credits to be given in the first place, I think they need to go back and look at the bill and see that there are safeguards in place to guard against rates supporting clean energy credits when they are not necessary from a financial standpoint. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Okay, any other old business? Okay, moving on to new business. Do we have any new business? Well, I'm going to take a swing at something here. We talk about Lake County being a bellwether county. For those who may not know, that means as Lake County goes, so goes the nation. And that's caused me to be paying very close attention to things that are being said, things that are being done, changes in activity. And, there's been a lot of criticism of law enforcement, public safety forces in general. I'm proud to say that I'm working with two colleagues. I know Commissioner Young's been very supportive of our sheriff's office, as Commissioner Serino has. In fact, Commissioner Serino's son, I believe, is a firefighter that serves very diligently in a very dedicated fashion. That's commendable, and I am deeply concerned by some of the discussion that has happened or doesn't even happen. In fact, people are getting to the point where they're afraid to talk. Just yesterday, I had a little run-in a good way, doing some work over at Fair Housing, trying to get their building back online. They had a flooding issue. Well, their director called the police, and lo and behold, everything was good, a suspicious vehicle, and this, that, and the other thing. But people are getting to be afraid to make that call because the director was actually embarrassed. We even joked afterwards, this is going to make a good story. And it really didn't strike me until just before this meeting how that is a story, because we've got our young people who are, that old saying, out of the mouths of babes. Our friends in Chardon, when they displayed a flag supporting one of their coaches who's in law enforcement, some people interpreted that in a very negative way, and that's unfortunate. I can tell you, being involved with Safety Town, and I'll speak to Madison because that's what I'm most familiar with. We had an educator, wonderful lady. She and I differ greatly on our political beliefs, but commitment to youth and education, we're on the same page. Laura Haynes and our chief back in the day, Chief Ed Matty, they embraced Safety Town. It was a program where you would introduce Officer Friendly and Safety Pup, and you would educate young people to interact with law enforcement in an appropriate way. Wave at an officer with all 5 fingers. Show respect, and respect is shown back. I'm very pleased to say that some of those young people are now adults with children of their own. And it's made an impression upon me when they thank me for my time, even just as an auxiliary, making sure that crossings are good and field trips are safe, getting in the way of traffic before some inattentive driver does something unfortunate. And I can honestly say I don't know a single officer that's ever worked a traffic detail didn't run into somebody that was I'll just say it, knucklehead. And I'm not even sure if that's politically correct anymore, and frankly, at this moment, I don't care. We've got good people here in Lake County. Our safety forces are exemplary. They're ahead of the curve. We're very proactive. We do good things. And I am very concerned when people are afraid to say that. When you see an officer wave, say hello, at least smile. Our fire services, give them the same courtesy. What are we teaching our kids? The second they do a good thing by supporting one of their coaches, somebody in a position of authority tries to turn it into something negative. Thank God the community is standing up and saying no, too far. Maybe as a bellwether county, we might want to, rather than being seen as reactive, might want to show just how active we really are. We're working on so many positive projects that do not involve politics and the, dare I say, toxic nature that it's become these days. We have good people. Captain Warner of our Sheriff's Department, longtime fire chief, now with our Sheriff's Department, program for training telecommunicators, the next generation of dispatchers, a program that is being called for nationally. We already did that here in Lake County. We sought out funding. We did through a cooperative effort working with our Clerk of Courts, Maureen Kelly. It was a pilot project that this Board of Commissioners believed in, fully accredited through the Auburn Career Center. A program that is being looked at as a national example of the way things should be done. We are doing many good things. We have mayors and city managers that are good quality people. They've responded to our concerns, and we have weekly meetings. We did have bi-weekly, but we got things in good hands. One of the reasons why Lake County is under 10% in our unemployment, if anybody ever told me that 9.9% would be good, well, in perspective. But it shows the level of cooperation, support, the strength of the economy right here in Lake County. These are all good indicators. And generally speaking, that's because people feel safe. And to those people who have criticisms, there are processes in place. If you have a grievance, take it to the department. And if that doesn't work, take it to civilian leadership. One of the other projects we're talking about in conjunction with mayors and city managers, and I have to say that Mayor Morley of Eastlake has been an absolute pleasure to work with on this. We're working on getting training and experience to those civilian leaders who have control over law enforcement. I can again make a reference back to my time with Madison Village. Very often, law enforcement is set up for failure by the civilian leadership. Not necessarily deliberately. Civilian leadership says you're here to enforce laws. So you have to go out and make sure the grass isn't too tall, that their vehicles are operating. And at the same time, you have to be a guidance counselor, a marriage counselor. You have to be a diplomat, and at a moment's notice, you have to be able to bring it. That's setting people up for failure. But the professionalism of our community has really carried us through. This is something that's been on my mind, and it just finally clicked here today. I decided, you know what, let's just get it out there. We have good people. We have systems in place. When we adopt best practices, if we find it's not good enough, we develop those good practices and we share them. And we're doing that right now. So here's our opportunity to make a difference. With that, I'll turn that over to my two colleagues, because I'd be stunned if you didn't have something to add to that one.
Thank you, Mr. President. Great comments, and certainly well taken. We have so much to be proud of here in Lake County. And we are truly a bellwether county in many respects. In addition to those comments about respecting and appreciating the work of our first responders at all levels, I find it also very disappointing that there's so many, and not in Lake County, but around our state and surrounding cities and certainly around the country, where political figures, office holders, and or candidates have not condemned the disrespect for the rule of law that we all live by, we all should live by. And, you know, some people have, some candidates and officials have just recently awakened to that problem because the polling shows that it's an issue for them. But that's not leadership. Leadership means you get out in front of a problem, not you react to it when the polling suggests otherwise. And I just find it a real crisis of leadership that so many candidates and elected officials around our country simply do not condemn rioting, looting, destruction of property, putting entrepreneurs out of business, certainly harming people. And it just needs to be condemned, and it needs to be condemned as it happens, not 3 to 4 months after it happens, because it's convenient. And I hope voters hold officials accountable to not condemning things that violate the rule of law and the public safety. That is a very serious issue, and if there's anything that we should expect from leaders, it is that we keep our community safe. All other things aside, we have to keep our community safe. And so many elected officials have failed us, and so many candidates have failed us in advance of even taking office, should they be elected, because they have, in fact, not only refused to defend the rule of law, they've actually encouraged people to break the law. And that I find quite offensive, Mr. President. Thank you.
Indeed, and just to finish some of my thoughts here, wasn't so many weeks ago that Sheriff Liam Bruno put out a message saying, hey, take my bumper stickers off your cars because people are being harassed, being challenged, attacked, threatened. I will admit, at about that same time, I found myself having a motorcyclist shaking a fist and referring to me as an MFing pig-loving MFer. So, with that, I can be a little bit rebellious. I went out and got myself one of those nice little thin blue and red line ribbons and put that on the back of the truck. It's like, I'll take that and see you one better. But I have to say, though, that some of the leadership that Commissioner Serino has been referring to is actually being demonstrated by our faith community. Those are the trusted voices that are speaking up. I had the pleasure of working with Bishop Coffey, mostly through Begin the Conversation, but in some other projects for advocacy, for education. His brother, Lee Coffey, is an expert on the subject and has good data, good programs to share, and those are some of the things that are being shared with our civilian leadership over law enforcement in an upcoming series of training events that are going to be sponsored here shortly. I have to say that Bishop Maribel at the recent protest here on the square, we prayed together, and then he went down on the square and prayed with the young people. But it didn't stop there. We had Pastor Brian Jones. I'll try to give the executive summary version. The outside non-Lake County residents that came to the protest to help keep things energized. He was one of the people that challenged them. I'll just say words to the effect of, our county, our town. Needless to say, they behaved. And Pastor Coffey, Bishop Coffey's son, Maurice, I must confess, I'm very proud to say I've watched him go from being a real firebrand to being a statesman. He's doing his family name proud. And those are the trusted voices that are making a difference. And as elected leaders, I encourage all of us to speak up. Don't be intimidated into silence. With that, Commissioner Young, anything you want to?
Well, you two gentlemen have said it just about it all. I'll just toss in this. That's simply that I think that what really holds America together is faith and belief. Belief in the innate goodness of our founding documents, of the people of this country, a goodness that's proved itself throughout history. I mean, there have been aberrations, but generally, if you look at how America has behaved in the family of nations, we've certainly given more than we've taken. So at the end of the day, it's not so much the power of our military or the power of the the police forces that are protecting us, or even, in a sense, all the fairness, justice, if you will, that's written into the laws. But it's the belief of our citizenry in this nation, its intentions, and its future. And I think we can all support that with our families, with our friends. You know, if things get really nasty and negative, it's a good time to start talking about some of the cool things about this country and how unique it is throughout the world. So those are things to be treasured and remembered. And appreciate working with you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Bless you, sir. Okay, and with that, moving on to public comments. Administrator Boyd, do we have any email comments? Indicating none. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sereno.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes. Thank you all. This meeting stands adjourned.